The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Um, this is a video that kind of probably spans a bunch of different mediums, from movies to comics to pop culture. And, I think we're going through a bigger kind of shift in the way people view and consume entertainment. We've talked about how comic books is going through this cyclical change, and I think it's undeniable that it is. I think COVID kind of halted it for temporarily kind of put it on ice for about 2-3 years, but you're seeing it happen now. You're seeing a number of kind of very core classic titles really struggle. You're seeing Marvel struggle to kind of get things moving with the X-Men franchise, and that's a bizarre place to be. If you think even when Marvel and kind of in hindsight it's 2020, but you think about when Fox had the rights to X-Men and Marvel was kind of deprioritizing that title for a period of time, you didn't have the same level of writer artist kind of quality. I mean, they still were making an attempt, despite whatever you think about somebody like Brian Michael Bendis. He was one of the top names in the entire company, and so he goes over to X-Men. That is a big deal. It's a sign of faith of that title. But all the same, it just, there was clearly this shift to let's make the Inhumans work. Let's put more emphasis behind the Avengers, and all that's fine. But even in that time period, X-Men still sold. In fact, from what we've heard from Ike Perlmutter, that was a level of frustration at times that the fans were still into it, even though they were clearly deprioritizing it or trying to shift the attention elsewhere. But now in 2023, we do have an issue where getting attention and getting momentum behind the X-Men has suddenly become more difficult. You had that push of Hoxpox and everything, but the Krakoa era, from the numbers, from the hard sales numbers. Now, I hear you. If that's, because every time I say I don't like it, people come in like, this is the best the X-Men has ever been. It's fine. It's a nice, subjective opinion. But it, by the numbers, it's not. So you just don't have the same attachment and struggle. And what you're seeing is with the MCU, with the movies as well, and with DC, I mean, you're seeing what was once fairly safe, bankable films struggling. The Flash on DC side struggled. A lot of the recent MCU films have struggled. And this is where, I think people may view it a little differently, but the quality of these movies hasn't significantly changed. If you look at The Flash, now you may think the main actor is completely annoying. Okay, you're fair to think that. I do not disagree with you. It's a double negative. I agree with you. That's a more positive way of saying it. Terribly annoying. But they're throwing in a Michael Keaton cameo. They're doing some multiverse stuff. These were all things that once upon a time, and that once upon a time was like 10 years ago, it would have gone huge. But it's not now. So why? The easy answer is fatigue, and I think that is right. But to get more specific about that fatigue, you look at just the franchises, whether it's Indiana Jones, which I was wrong. My firm assumption, again, playing it like Hollywood always does, was that, that will make a certain basis of money. And make no mistake about it, Disney, it's not the epic flop that a lot of sites put on it, even though it didn't make anywhere close to what it needed to make, because Disney is going to merchandise it, put it in box sets. They're going to have it as part of their library. They'll be able to sell some streaming rights. I mean, there's lots of ways they can make up a lot of the cash on that film. Or so it's not an entire epic disasters, unlike, say, The Flash, that is going to it does not have that basis to lean back on. But regardless of all that, these movies underperformed. Ninja Turtles, that is out, is underperforming. So, what does that tell us? Well, Star Wars, again, regardless of the reason, whether you think Kathleen Kennedy drove it into a woke apocalypse or whether, whatever your theory is, the general interest and bankability, meaning the what we could project out of these franchises, is severely down. Wrestling went through this a few years ago as well, where, hey, you could trot out kind of a tease of an angle, but you go back to the NWO, you go back to some of the kind of big hits enough times, people just get tired of it. You burn it out. And if you contrast that with the success of Barbie, for just a moment, Barbie did really well. $1 billion film. Enough that a handful of people are now suddenly like, woke sells all kinds of money. Yeah, you're all missing the point. It has nothing to do with woke or not woke in this case. It has to do with burnout. Just plain burnout. Now, if you make the franchise too ridiculous and too silly and it strays too much for the original, and you're doing that for social reasons, that's going to accelerate the process. I don't deny you. It's just the same that if you went, hard in the other direction, if suddenly, you went all right wing, all Republican aggressively, so super religious, super conservative values with Fast and the Furious. Nobody wants that either. They want the franchises to stay true to the core of what they are. But when they stray, it accelerates a natural process, which is called burnout. And so if you look at Barbie, why did Barbie do well? Well, frankly, one fairly simple reason. It isn't a tired franchise. Yes, Barbie has been around for a long time, and if there's one thing everybody wants, they do like nostalgia. They do like to see things like, hey, I remember that thing from when I was a kid, and now they're going to do something with it now that I'm an adult, and I get to kind of remember when I was a kid, and there'll be some clever kind of inside baseball jokes in there too. And that's a winning combo. It has been forever, and it will continue to be. But when you're doing a nostalgia play on something that is burned out and tired, people feel like they've seen it before. They're not going to show up. Barbie had the benefit of, there really wasn't a lot of Barbie material prior to the movie. The toys certainly in the stores and everything else, but it generally floated along for kids. There wasn't a Barbie TV show for adults. I think there's a Barbie cartoon that comes out periodically. I know my younger daughter will watch it from time to time, or used to. But it wasn't in your face everywhere. Barbie wasn't the mascot for a bunch of things. They weren't building the Barbie cinematic universe. There was none. It was relatively fresh and new, and it hit the notes of a nostalgia play. And those two things combined to be, okay, it felt new and fresh. People show up to the theater with it. Now you contrast that with Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles has had a lot of reboots and starts and stops and cartoons, live action. And there's been, you had the Michael Bay movies a few years ago that were out. You've had a lot of goes at that franchise. And so you come out and it's like, this time they're wacky. They're voiced by Seth Rogen. By the way, who I'm convinced Seth Rogen does something in that movie. Maybe I've got it wrong. Pretty sure he does. But you put him in a movie that also is like there's like a bingo card of how to accelerate something into just annoyance and exhaustion. I think him being a voice actor is one of those. But anyway, not to beat up too much on, but I just think the Ninja Turtles franchise felt like it's been done a lot. And so it comes out and it's like, oh, here they are. The animation's a little different. I don't know. They try to do a Spider-Verse kind of thing where the animation's different. I'm not sure. Oh, April O'Neil is a short, heavy black woman. All right. Whatever. But it feels on the offset old. And it's something they've done before. It's why you have the same effect with the Star Wars movie. It's like, hey, here's another Star Wars show debuting on Disney Plus. And it's like, okay, it's got, low numbers. Why? Because there's been a bunch of them and the quality's been kind of all over the place, often lower than what people expect, or at least hope for. And so it's like, I just, how many times are you going to squeeze blood out of this stone? It just, people start to walk away from things like that. Now, keep in mind, I didn't see Ninja Turtles. A friend of mine did and said, wow, it was really funny. It was great. And I think I would be completely unsurprised if the film was actually good. Kids liked it. But it's still not going to perform well because it still feels tired. And that's a problem with a lot of these franchises. They feel just tired. And so when they feel tired, I think you have two choices you can make. Either you radically change it, that it feels different enough that you get the audience coming back and people excited, I think that's extremely risky. I think that's the riskiest possible way to do it, because the reality is you change it, you arguably start to change it so much that it no longer feels like the original thing that you're doing a movie off of, and then you don't have the bit. Then you get people angry because it doesn't feel much like the original, and nobody attaches it to the original. So you kind of get the worst of both worlds in that case, and I think that's definitely been the problem. Or you say, look, we're going to go back to the core concept, and we're going to be really true and really honest to that, and that's kind of the other way you could make it work. You're still going to deal with some exhaustion, but at the very least, you're being more true to the nostalgic play you're doing. So, for example, if Marvel Comics, you have a choice of, it's like, all right, people are less interested in the X-Men. Okay, we can do either one of two things. Either we create a brand new team, completely new characters, just appeal to a different audience, all that kind of stuff, a little bit of what they've been doing. But then you have to fully sever yourself from the past and just deliver something new and good. But again, that's risky. I think it's very risky because a lot of, you have no guarantee you're bringing your old fans, and you have no guarantee you're going to get the new ones. So you're taking a huge gamble. Or you go, you know what, for a couple of years, we're just going to deliver just solid. So the team is going to be, Storm and Cyclops and Colossus and Wolverine and Nightcrawler, and we're going to have to throw Kitty Pryde in there. And, that's going to be the team. They're going to face Sentinels, and they're going to face the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. We're going to screw it. We're going to do that. We're just going to try and deliver just very, very solid expected stories, and at least get people back on kind of a basis before we start branching out again. That's the solution. Again, if you look at wrestling, where they had success is they went back to core stables. The whole Roman's Reigns storyline is a classic wrestling storyline of, you got a stable and you've got a heel, and he cheats, and he's got some, shenanigans with his family that may or may not cause trouble down the road. And they're like, when they do the classic stuff and they do it well, it pays off. It tends to recalibrate things. But that's what you have facing right now in Hollywood and in comics and a lot of things, is you just have extreme brand fatigue. And you hear this talked about by editors, by other people, and the solutions they offer is usually, that's why we need to make a radical change, forgetting that the radical change can accelerate that fatigue even further. So, we get mixed up with all this. Well, it's, the political factor or this, that. There's a lot of theories about why things are the way they are and can be the way they can be. But in many cases, the simplest answer is people are burned out. With Marvel, it's like, and it's a hard problem they've got themselves into, because a lot of the actors in the original set have left, sued them, all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, you don't have that original cast, but what people really want to see is that same cast that was in the first Avengers movie come back and have another Avengers movie. That's what they want. And so we can keep changing it. In this case, because we have to, the actors have moved on. But, that in the midst of 80 movies of kind of varying quality, you got people tired of the franchise, and then you're trying to, bait them and tempt them with kind of new, different characters. And it's like, that's not going to work. You couldn't do it again because several of the actors have passed, but if you could somehow do a Star Wars film that had, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and they're having an adventure together, that would do well. I think you gotta lean one way. You have to either do something completely, utterly new, like Barbie did, where it was a franchise that wasn't burned out, and you can, lay new ground with it, or you've got to, stay true to the original. But when something's exhausted, you can't tinker with it. Not in this way. You can't mess with it. It doesn't pay off. And I think we're seeing tons of examples in comics and movies and everything else where people, soundly reject it. So that's my opinion as my theory. I think that, you can certainly make changes to a franchise. Look at the Fast and the Furious franchise. It clearly pivoted by necessity in some cases. The actors needed so much money, they couldn't do the movie they were doing. They had to, up the budget and go for, a bigger spectacle, because that was the only way they were going to be able to, in their minds, pull in the money and afford the talent involved. And that turned out to be a good plan for them. They made a little franchise. They did it properly. You could do it early and you can make these kinds of changes. But when the franchise is beat, tired, exhausted, when you're doing Friday the 13th, part 14, and it's like, let's send Jason into space and have him be a space monster. That's an example of like, no, you blew it up. You did so many movies that people are tired. And I think the horror genre largely got this early. You saw that like, let's do a billion Saw movies. And at some point it's like, we either have to kind of go back to the core of what this thing is about. It's what they did in the latest remake, and it did a little bit better, or we're going to have to, just move on and just do a different film, but just keep churning out sequels where it gets more and more, strays from the original. That's not working. So anyway, I think exhaustion plays a huge factor into what we're seeing right now, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.